Yeah, you got me pumped. Maybe I'm gonna make more films, I make films now. One other thing I wanted to talk about was about not, like I said, I think I talked a little bit about it, not trying to fit every part of your life into one thing. And so now I don't really get a lot of creative satisfaction from my work. I get more money from it, but yeah, I'm dying for some more, that moment of creativity. So talking to you now, I'm pumped about it. Now I'm like, hey, I am good at this.
All right. Well, welcome to the Downing Cut. I'm here to welcome Morgan Dusatko, a former video and audio producer and composer with 12 years of experience, now an MBA as a product manager, skilled in uniting creatives, technicians, and clients to achieve goals. He's managed teams at Microsoft and a PBS affiliate and the Morning Brew, focusing on growth, innovation, and agile coordination across functional areas. Welcome to the Down and Cut, Morgan.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, that sounds like me.
What I like to do is focus on the video and production side of things,
Absolutely.
and just wanted to find out how did you start into that domain?
Yeah, I had zero interest in filmmaking as a profession or as a thing. I went to the Evergreen State College, and I wanted to study music production because I've been a musician, and I wanted to write an opera, and like a kind of a rock opera, and I was really interested in recording and working in studios. So I went to Evergreen, and the only class that they had that was sort of anywhere in that realm was called Media Works. And so I got there on the first day, and the lady was like, "Hey, this is film school." And I was like, "Okay." And then they handed me a camera. And, the first time I grabbed a camera, I was like, it just made sense. And so I dove in, and the whole thing made sense to me. Immediately, I started making a bunch of work that I liked, that I thought was fun. And the program was a year and was really transformative. And by the time I was done, my professor, she didn't know what she was doing, but she called me a filmmaker, and I was like, shit, I guess I am. So that's what happened.
And how long did it take you? I mean, did you start not only understanding the camera work, but you love music? So did you start doing like a music video or incorporating composing for films that you made?
Yeah, when I learned film at Evergreen. They teach film. It's one of the only schools in the country that teach film in a fine art context. So we were watching films as fine art. We were studying it alongside with, like, let's say, sculpture. It's way more like poetry than prose. And we also had an incredibly demanding schedule. So I think if you were to go to, I don't know, I had some friends, I went to Chapman. I have some friends that go to like traditional film school, and you make like one film. At Evergreen, we had something to do every 2 weeks. And so when you have something to do every 2 weeks, you just got to do it. And so everybody in the class became conversant in camera work, on location audio recording, and then kind of using the tools that you have at your disposal. So because I am also a music producer, a lot of my films had that musical element, but there were other people that were performers, other people that sort of relied on other things. So yeah, I did make a music video for one, but like, I guess ironically, it wasn't even to the music that I created. And so, because I'm a musician, I do, and also I just like um, music and film. I do use music as like I'm pretty heavy handed. And I think some of the people that I work with think I should turn the music down, but I think we should turn the music up.
Well, now did this is also lead into your professional career as
Yeah,
well?
absolutely. So after that year, I just thought, like, oh, shit, I need to do this. This is what I was put on earth to do. And so after my last year at Evergreen, we attempted to make a feature. I made a 35 or 40-minute movie, half a feature. And then I was working at a television station. And when it was my time to leave Olympia, I came and got a very similar job here at a television station, a public access television station. So we were creating a lot of things. We were mentoring, people in the community. This was pre-YouTube, although YouTube was just burgeoning. And so from then on, I tried to make a career out of it for 12 years. So yeah, that's what happened. I just thought I got to do more of this, and this is what I do. And so I dove in.
Like, were you able to integrate your love of music and composing and writing music for those positions that you worked for?
No, maybe, kinda. Here's the rub, and if anyone is listening to this or, is thinking about filmmaking, and has a passion for filmmaking, there are two, making a career out of creating video and making a film that you're passionate about are two completely different things. In 2024, as this was in 2008, there is a very little economy for creating films. And there is a huge, a very, very small success rate of making a career, of people that want to make a career out of filmmaking and people that make a career out of filmmaking. So I spent the 12 years that I was a video producer making the majority of my work was very artistic corporate films. So they were incredibly well lit executives at Microsoft, and I would throw in music sometimes, and then the boss would tell me to turn it down. Or you know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
would just try to put in my thing. Not I wasn't even trying to sneak it in. It's just like how I think about it. And then,
Sure.
I always had pushback to make my angles more conventional, make my cuts more conventional, to just kind of just the facts, man. Maybe it was just me or the situation that I was in, but the vast majority of money to be made in the realm of motion pictures is in a very just capture something, throw it together, and then put it somewhere for somebody to see. And if you're lucky, some people like it'll be informational and transparent. People will watch it.
Were you able to pursue your love for music though on the side or anything like that? Did you start to grow and focus on that?
Yeah, I guess. I was also in a band, so I did that, and I have scored during that time when I was a video producer. I was also scoring my own films and other people's films, and I was also writing
Okay.
music, and so I've probably scored maybe 20 films, but it's just like I direct half of the movies I directed. I also scored them just because we didn't have anyone else to score them. I was in a creative partnership with a couple of people for a couple of years, and I would score their films. They would direct a film, and then I would score it if they didn't have anyone else in mind. So I scored a lot of stuff, and I did incorporate, like I said, kind of music creatively into my stuff, but also the payoff. I'm also an improviser. That's one thing that didn't make it through into my biography, but I have done improv for 10 years. And improv is kind of like my third art form. And filmmaking is a incredibly difficult art form. It's logistically difficult. It's maybe the most, maybe that and maybe video games are the most resource intensive art forms, and they take a long time to build, and nothing ever gets close to what you envisioned it, I think, unless you have a lot of money. So you got to be scrappy and you got to think about it a lot. Music, I can get a lot closer to what I hear in my
Yeah.
head or to the vision I have, like just to create a vibe. It's a lot easier to just like create a vibe, and it's easier to get closer to the moment of creation.
What caused you to kind of put an end cap? You said you've been in the production side of it for 12 years. What caused you to get out of it? Was it the fact that it started to feel like more cookie cutter and less creative?
I was laid off. I got laid off from my job, and I was
Mm,
grateful. And the company that I was working for, the two people that had my own company for 5 years, and we made a documentary feature that got picked up for distribution, which is cool. That's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
95% of documentaries that get made don't get picked up for distribution. And so both of my co creators, co-founders in the company, both moved to LA to find their fame and fortune. And so I was here and I got laid off and I just thought, shit, I don't want to. So this is I think this is also you know, I'm a little older, and the big insight, maybe something I would have told myself as a younger person, is to not try to fit everything into it. Like I said, the video industry is very difficult, and the money that's to be made, um, way for the most part, is corporate money, especially if you don't live in LA. And that stuff is just, you're making videos for Microsoft, you're making videos for Amazon, you're making videos for programmers, marketing managers, for people. It's very transactional, and it's very much like, you're gonna capture this. Or, it's streaming, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
it's not filmmaking, it's not art. You're kind of plugging things together, and it's a kind of a gray collar job where you're bridging the technical stuff to allow people to communicate. It's interesting in and of itself, sort of, but it's not art. And
Yeah.
if what's going on in your heart is screaming to create something, uh, you have to be very talented, very lucky, and I would say for the most part young, in order to combine that with making money at the same. I'm much more fulfilled because I'm doing something else for money and it's making me a lot more money. I mean, I'm not like getting rich or whatever. I just like, I got laid off and I thought, I don't want to work in video anymore. What's the same job where I make money, where I can bring a bunch of technicians and creative people together, and I do the same thing except in software. And so,
It's just product
exactly.
management, right?
So video production, video producer, and product manager, 70% the same job.
In product management though, you're not creating any kind of content or any kind of workflows for people to see visually.
I
Is that
did
correct?
work in media for
Okay.
5 years. So I worked like at Morning Brew. It's a media company, and I was in charge of the whole editorial product. And so I worked with newsletters and I worked with the website, and then at at Channel 9 at KCTS, I built the streaming platform. Me and my boss did. And so,
Oh,
we built
nice.
the mini Netflix. It's
Yeah.
completely different than creating video, but I think it was because I was dovetailing in. But honestly, my video production, like knowing how to use a camera or even what a bit rate is, it was zero. You know,
Yeah.
the transferable skills was being able to lead, being able to make decisions, being able to think a couple of steps beyond what we're doing, being able to talk to technicians, and being able to talk to artists, designers, and being able to talk to regular people and then tell them what to do. That's the real skill of a producer and director.
I can relate. I've been laid off twice, and my background's learning and
Yeah.
development. And when I first started, I was making marketing
Yeah.
content for a outdoors care and repair company, and then moved over into actually producing somewhat commercialized clips that the company could send out to their
Yeah.
clients, and then started getting into learning and development videos of actually training
Yep.
videos on how to do something.
Yep.
And so I totally understand. That's why I was asking you what kind of thing. And it's interesting. I did start adding music to one of the training videos, and I got the same answer. Oh, we don't like it. Take it out.
Yeah, you know what
So
I mean. I was going to say that I think that the world is opening up a little bit, and one thing that I really like is like the contentification of everything. For example, a long time ago, I interviewed for the job with the Washington State Department of Transportation as their communication specialist. And essentially, they were like, "You're just gonna tweet about road closures." And I was like, "Oh, fuck this job. That sounds so boring." What I wanted to do was go make like epic videos about them building bridges and like, about the West Seattle Bridge almost falling down, or about them
Yeah.
building the tunnel. I wanted to make like epic propaganda videos or like different stuff like that. Now, and so I was like, but then they were like, "No, you're going to be tweeting." That was it. They were like, the actual test was how, like, me writing under 140 characters. Now on TikTok, they have someone that is making these unhinged videos, which are cool as hell. And I feel really glad for that person, that the whoever the boss is at the Department of Transportation isn't just making them like the tweet about road closures. They're letting them make some unhinged videos, which I think are really cool. Which I think is a huge untapped thing.
Sounds like you kind of planted that seed.
Yeah, I don't know if I did or not. I was like, "Hey, this is what I think the job is," and they were like, "That's not what the job is." And I was like, "This is kind of what the job description says." But I didn't get the job, and God bless them, they can do whatever they want. I didn't have to move to Olympia,
Yeah.
so
There's one question. You said your creative partners moved to LA. Is there a reason why you didn't choose to jump ship and head down
you
there
know what?
too?
I'm from LA, and so I
Okay.
lived in LA when I lived in LA twice. I've lived in LA until I was 11. I went to elementary school in LA. And then I lived in LA
Oh
from
wow.
when I was 21 to 25 or something like that. Right before I went to Evergreen, I lived in LA. And living in LA is hard as hell. I knew, like, I was going in with my eyes open. I met dozens, hundreds of people, thousands of people that just come to LA and they just get chewed up. And I didn't want to get chewed up, man. I didn't want to go to LA without a plan. And I knew that having one feature doc that had got picked up for distribution wasn't enough momentum to make me go down there and start to have meetings. And I already knew that if I were to go from, I was a corporate video producer here and I was a known quantity to some. I was probably a B level corporate video producer. But if I had gone down to LA, I'd be a F level, a D level, you know? They have people 10 times more talented than me that have come to LA and washed out of the scene, and now they're making their corporate videos. So I didn't want to just be another cog in the machine. I kind of got disillusioned by the whole thing. And so I honestly think that, if we're here and we're going to make a feature the way I am, I want to be as close to the creation as possible. I don't have time to raise $1 million or $5 million or $10 million. I have no idea how to do it. I don't want to call people. I don't want to kiss a bunch of rich people's ass. I don't want to do it. I want to make a movie, and I'm okay with it being a little janky or throwing it together. I have that spirit. And so
Yeah.
I was like, if I'm gonna make a stand, if I'm gonna like make it, I'm gonna make a, I don't- I'm gonna make some awesome movies here, just on my own, and then I'm gonna go when people are calling me, and no one's called me,
Makes
so that's
sense.
why I'm still
Yeah.
here. And you know what? I'm okay with it. LA is hard. Like I said, LA is a hard city to be
Yeah.
in.
Did you stay in contact with those two
Yeah, yeah,
creatives?
definitely.
Did they did they make it, or how
I
are they
guess it
doing
depends on
it?
how what you mean by make it. They both have
Yeah.
like all three of us have careers that are like kind of facsimiles of what we were doing. One of them is working like in one of them works for Disney as a technician in their workflow. Like he works for like the kind of the DevOps of editing. So
Yeah.
he works on the machine. He keeps the servers running that all the Marvel movie stuff is on. And then another friend is she moved to producing live events
Oh,
instead of videos. So we're all doing kind of facsimiles of what we did before. But like I said,
sure.
it's a brutal industry, and so I would say one of them, he's the closest that has stayed in it, and he's definitely not doing anything creative.
When you said your documentary got picked up, did you compose the music for that?
Yeah.
So then, can you describe a time when your original score significantly changed the direction or mood of a scene?
Working with myself is different than working with other people. Maybe I have a more music. I think maybe if the people that will work with me might say, I mean, I have like a particular method that I do when I'm directing, and it is musical. So, for example, I did a fly film earlier, and during like when we were actually kind of when we were not when the camera was on, but before and after, I was just playing this one album. And in my head, the whole thing was scored to this album. And I took a lot of uh, inspiration from this sound of this album. And I do that a lot on my films where we're listening. Uh, if it's the same song over and over, although people get sick of that. I don't get sick of it. But a lot of people get sick of listening to the same song over and over for 3 hours while we're setting up some shots or whatever. But so then in my head, I want to use that. And then I try to get as close as I can because I can't use like one of them, for example, was Don't Ho, the song Tiny Bubbles. I just can't use it because, we got to do it. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to create that same vibe. And usually I'll kind of I'll try to back off for a little bit. Working with other people is a lot different. Um, that has a lot to do with I find it easy for them to put in some tech music, like put in whatever song you want, and I'll try to get a similar vibe to that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
How do you handle it when it doesn't?
Oh, I just do what they say. I'm a pro, man.
Yeah.
So somebody
Yeah.
wants something a different way, I'll just do it that way, to the best of my ability. Sometimes I get frustrated because sometimes they'll, if I disagree with the situation, or if I disagree with a choice. I think I used to fight about it. I used to not fight, but I used to be a little bit more robust with my opinion.
Yeah.
I think more and more I care less. Like I remember my then girlfriend, now wife. I shot and edited. She got paid to do a couple book trailers, so I shot and edited them, and she directed them. And she wanted to use this like glow filter, and make everything look. And I was like, it's like I was like kind of trying to tell her like it's like using Comic Sans. Like it might be
Yeah.
okay, but like in the context of this, if another video person saw this, they would laugh and say like, why are you using that dumbass filter? And we got into a fight
Yeah.
about it. And she was like, do what I say. And I was like, this is really bad. Like you're telling me to print this and, you're telling me to use Comic Sans. And so she
Yeah.
got mad. But then I happened to watch that the other day. And I just thought, I should have never thought about that. Looks fine. I don't care. Why did I care? You know what I mean? Like 100 people saw it.
Yeah.
Like, why
Yeah.
do I care?
And nobody said anything, and
Yeah,
everyone accepted.
no one said anything. It was just what it was. And um, yeah, I think it's important when you're collaborating, to make sure that your opinion, you got to wear your opinion lightly, and you got to know, um, that's what being a professional is, advocating for
Yeah.
your opinion
Absolutely.
and then backing off and knowing when to back off.
So, how do you approach composing music for like different genres, per se? Like what techniques do you use to ensure authenticity?
Yeah, I'm a good musician, but I'm not a well-rounded musician. I'm not like I didn't go to music school. And so, for example, there is a film that I'm kind of still editing that I wish I could have a certain type of score, and I just don't know how to do it. It's kind of like it's like a film noir type film, and I want to have like an orchestral type of score that like harkens back to the 50s.
Mm,
And I just don't have that music in my vocabulary. I don't. I kind of have gotten a little bit close. I made some music that was sort of like that, um, but it was not. It was not. It was not in that realm. So my range
yeah.
is somewhat limited. So if you want like a Cliff Martinez type of score, I can whip those out. all day, every day. But if you want a
Mhm.
John Williams type score, you're gonna have to call somebody else. And so I just kind of do, I have my skills as a musician, and especially with scoring music. I think I'm more, if we were in a band, I'm pretty versatile. I can play a bunch of different instruments, we can play in a bunch of different genres, but film scores, um, I guess the more tools I get as a musician, the more I can bring that to film. But um, film scores also use a completely different musical vocabulary than if you were just making a song. And so
Sure.
there are times when it's appropriate in a movie to just like throw a pop song on top of it. But those are actually way fewer and far between than something that has to use a completely different vocabulary. And in that vocabulary, like I said, I have some range, but you wouldn't kind of call me. So I kind of don't, you know. I do
Mhm.
what I can do, and for the most part, it's worked out. So if you need an orchestral score, lose my number.
Let me ask you this, because I'm the composer part fascinated me, but it sounds like there's some aspects of you that are really more of a director. Would you say you're more of a director more heavily most of the time than a composer?
In the film world, I am known as a director and producer.
Okay.
Um, yeah, producing, shooting, editing, composing, and acting are all secondary skills. But if you were to call me up and say, "Hey, compose my film," I would be able to do that. But I would be way more, let's say, useful as a producer, director, first AD type of person.
What would you say, when it comes to the love, though? I mean, do you love that more? Is there something that really drives you to continue, or is there a reason why you don't focus in one direction, or you just like having the jack of all trades in those arenas?
It's kind of like being a Marine. I was trained, when I went to school, like kind of like I was mentioning, the school that I went to, you had to complete something every 2 weeks. So everybody learned how to set white balance, how to pull focus, like the ins and outs of a camera, what a codec was, how to transfer that footage. We all learned how to edit. We all learned how to export. We learned all of the technical skills. And I think in filmmaking, it's important. We should kind of think of that as like, I guess I don't want to be too much, whatever, but um, film
Yeah.
schools should be spitting out jacks of all trade. No one should leave a film school without knowing how to edit, knowing how to shoot, knowing how to do their own thing. And I would say that as a broad toolkit as a filmmaker, everyone should have that. And so, as a shooter, I have a certain style, and I have shot films before that I didn't direct, and I, have a look for it. And it's the same thing with creating music, and it's the same thing with editing. I think as a producer and director, I just have the personality. I think it's way more of like a personality thing, or like where you feel comfortable
Sure.
fitting in. One is that like I said, I can shoot, but there's a lot of people who love shooting more than me. There's a lot of people that really are in love with cinematography. And I like cinematography, but I'm not, I love cinematography, but I'm not in love with cinematography. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I'm a natural organizer of people, and I'm a people person, and I care about the group. I'm an extrovert. And so it just so happened that, like, as I was starting out, I had convinced a lot of people to work on a film that I directed. And then I had the film, and then I directed it. And then, that same group of people, we directed another film. It's like I'm in a group now of people,
Hmm.
performers, and um, uh, I would love for someone else to direct, but it's difficult. It's difficult to find someone that has all of that has that personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people just like love to do their role. They love to write, or they love to act, or they love to shoot. and they don't want to like ultimately be responsible. They don't want to do the work or whatever. It's not like they don't want to do the work. I'm not acting like people are lazy. I'm just saying that like you have to have a lot of confidence, and it's not even confidence, but you just have to have the personality for it. You've
Yeah.
been directed, right? You're an actor, right? That's how we met. Yeah.
Yep.
You've been directed by directors that are unconfident or not well suited to the job, right?
Yes. I have to think back. It's been a while, but yes, yes. Uh, it is interesting. I mean, from my perspective, when it comes to directing and acting, I think the creative process, and believe it or not, it is a little bit of a control thing where you have that vision and you want to mold it the way you want to mold it. But I mean, are you writing your own films or are you directing someone else's
I would
script?
love to not write them. I did when I was in my when I had my company, let's say in my producing days, I was surrounded by
Yeah.
filmmakers and people that had that stuff. So if I needed a shooter, I could call half a dozen shooters and they would just come and we could just make stuff. Same thing with editors. I knew a lot of technicians, but I didn't really know any what they kind of derisively call talent writers and actors. And then right as I was kind of fading out my career as a producer, as a video person, I got into improv. And like I said, I did that for 10 years. And so I have a huge Rolodex of honestly the funniest, smartest, best actors in the city. I know them all. And so a few years ago, I had made just like the shittiest film myself. And I played it at a sketch show. And a bunch of people came up and said, "Hey, we should make a film together." And so I got back. So the crew that I'm working with now is a bunch of like
Hmm.
really, I have a bunch of really funny, like, I know tons of writers and tons of actors, and I know almost no one that actually knows how to operate a camera. And so now I feel
Wow.
the opposite. I was heavy on the technical skill, and now I'm heavy on the
Yeah.
kind of creative part of it. And so I'm kind of melding that. So where I've been doing a lot of fly films over the last couple of years, and I've been meeting just randos, and I've been really lucky that I haven't met anybody that was like super psycho. But uh, so I kind of forget where I was going with this, but and maybe that's another reason
You're talking
why
about
I'm kind of been thrown into directing. But it also feels like I directed a few weeks ago. I directed a film, and it was someone who I hadn't seen in 6 years. And kind of the last
mm,
thing we did together was that I directed her then. And she told me that I was a much better director now because I had a lot more sort of confidence
yeah.
because I have the technical side and the performing side, and I can just kind of see the whole thing. So directing is a tough role because you're responsible for, like, is the exposure correct, is the shot right, and then like is this person actually making somebody feel a certain way or whatever it is.
Yeah. I can relate. There's times where I forgot to set the white balance and then I go to edit. Like, oh crap.
Yeah, exactly. That's your, you know what I mean, like that's the
Yeah.
thing, is that we've had like a bunch of um technical problems, and this isn't like necessarily the case, but it kind of is. The
Hmm.
director and the producer are responsible for everyone's mistakes on set. So I shot a film relatively recently. We had three cameras, and the three cameras were set differently. Like we were shooting at three different
Wow.
aspect ratios. We were all supposed to be shooting in 4K at, we're all supposed to be shooting at 4K. And one was shooting in 4K, one was shooting at 6K, and one was shooting in DCI. And so when we brought them into the edit, like we had to stretch them. It wasn't like a life changing thing, but I should have had more
Hmm.
control. And even though it was I guess you might call it the cinematographer's mistake, but everyone is, this is life, baby. So,
Yeah.
you're the director, you're the producer. It's your job to have produced the thing. And it's your job to coach everyone underneath you to do it and kind of double check those things.
What would you say you're knowing that you're an actor as well? What's your approach in working with actors to bring out their best performance?
I am so glad that I did improv for 10 years because I got to understand what an actor does and what it like what it is. I do not have a great love of acting. And but it has made me so much more conversant and actually kind of more chill. I kind of do the same shit that I did before. I just use, I don't know how to say it, but I just kind of use different language. So the first time I ever directed a film 20 years ago, I had never directed an actor before, and I had never really acted. I'd acted like a few times here and there, but I didn't know anything about it. So I got this book called Directing Actors by Judith something or another. It's a decent book. You know what I like about the book? That in the first two chapters, she just says, "I'm just going to give you the TLDR." So I just read the first couple
Mhm.
of chapters, and she talks about directing actors how you can't tell them what you want. You have to talk. You have to coach them through their process. So, for example, you can't say, I want you to act quirky. You have to say, I want you to find, or like, what your motivation is. You know what I mean? And kind of talk to them.
Mhm.
And I thought it is an incredibly, if you don't know about acting, it's an incredibly stilted way to talk to somebody, especially because you tell the cinematographer that you want him to point the camera in that way. Cinematographers kind of get mad if you don't talk to them technically. You know, like if you look at them and you tell a cinematographer put on the 25, they're glad. If you tell them like, oh, I want a
Yeah.
warm glow or whatever, they'll make fun of you behind your back.
Yeah.
But the actors are the opposite. So if you tell the actor like, I want you to hit it right here and I want you to say the line this way, the worst thing you can ever do to an actor is give them a line reading, unless you have mad trust with them. Or whatever it is. I'm a little bit more open to line readings now, but uh so anyway, the whole reason I'm kind of glad to have done that, because now I kind of understand where those things are. So often I'll just tell people, hey, hey, this thing isn't coming across this way, I want you to find it. And luckily, I haven't worked with like bad actors in a long time. Working with bad actors fucking sucks. Because the actors themselves are supposed to be doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely helped with my confidence, and definitely helped me be able to kind of work through. And then also, like, when you're in, the first film I made, I like all the films I make are kind of emotionally intense, and so I was kind of taking people there, and then you have to take people there safely, and someone has to be kind of like, I don't know how to put it. Working with people without a lot of training is difficult,
Mm.
because if you're like, okay, in this scene
Sure.
you're supposed to cry, or like this scene you're supposed to like have a breakdown, it's hard for people without any training to like not uh, have that thing inside of them. So, you know what? Can I
Yeah.
tell you one other thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Working with, um, like I said, I just directed a film a few weeks ago, and the film was really great. We did it for the 48-hour film festival, and our film was
What's it
it's
called?
called Overtime. It's called Overtime. It's a one shot film, and a lot of people came up to us and they were like, "Hey, you did great. We loved it, and it was very popular." And I was just like, you know what? We had a great lens. The writing was really great. The actors all knew what the hell they were doing. I just showed up and kind of, I just showed up and kind of yelled action and yelled cut, and kind of just made
Yeah.
sure that the wheels were rolling. You got a good lens. You got a camera person that's not a dumbass. You got a bunch of people that aren't trying to fight you. And if the actors know what you're doing, the job's easy if you can take responsibility.
Yeah. How would you balance our artistic vision with practical restraints like budget or time?
You know
I
what?
mean, 48
Yeah,
hours,
I
pretty solid
you
with
just
that,
do
right?
the damn thing. Just like be punk a little bit. Just like don't sweat it. Like I love a little bit of wabi-sabi. Okay, in our world, in no budget or very low budget filmmaking, it's almost unfortunate that you can go get a 6K right now and you can edit on Resolve for free, and you can do the whole thing for 2 grand. You can make a cinema quality movie, or rather the visuals can be cinema quality for about 2 grand. You don't even need to know how to do that much. Like I said, if you get if you're shooting in 6K or even 4K, and you have great glass, you got the, you have a great lens, you could make
Mhm.
an incredibly good looking movie. There are there is a huge dearth of movies with no balls, no guts, nothing that look amazing. That is now 80% of all independent and short films are like that. They look cinema quality, and the writing and acting is godless. So my thing has always been from the get-go, because I don't care about this, is that I want to say something, and I want to kind of show something, and I don't care if the wheels fall off a little bit. So, and this is my own thing. We, like, for this last film that we did it's a one shot film. We did 10 takes, and the last take is technically better than, like, we had a couple of focus issues, and we had like, we moved and we could see a light. We kind of went by a light. There was also another shot where you could kind of see the reflection of the camera operator. And I decided to use the take that was a little bit technically less there, because it had more balls, it had more guts, and it kind of moved us along. And when the actor's on the phone talking to their mom, and he knows he's gonna die, and she doesn't know he's gonna die, he brought it. And so if the camera kind of hits focus a little bit and kind of goes back, that's fine. And maybe it's better. So I think there's not enough wabi-sabi in the lack of wabi-sabi, or, like, the uh obsession with technical perfection in filmmaking comes from a lack of confidence,
Yeah.
and from a lack of that. It's like, mostly it's like young people doing it, and, like, young people, honestly, no offense to young people, but a lot of them don't have anything to say, and so they're, you know what I mean, we got to dig down, dig deep. Anyway.
So, so when you're saying wabi-sabi, are you and you're saying balls and guts, I
Yeah.
mean, are you talking about, like, because some people would say, "Well, it's not the best take. It's just a take, but it was close enough." Or are you saying it's good enough? What is it that you're describing when you say balls, guts, wabi-sabi?
Yeah.
Is it the take that
Yeah.
actually you see, is it based on the actors? Like, there's a little bit more coming out?
Yeah, so wabi-sabi is the idea that, like, you have a craft, and it has an imperfection, and the imperfection is what makes it. The imperfection is what locks it into place. And so the
Got
fact
it.
that we're, like, kind of swinging over and we can see a light there, some people, like, maybe it might take you out, but for some people it might put you in a little bit, you know? Or if there's, like, a focus hit somewhere, maybe maybe that little bit of imperfection is the thing, is to show you, maybe it brings it to that next level. So that's what wabi sabi is. And when I mean balls and guts, yeah, I'm 100% talking about the actors and the writing, and, like, what you're saying too much. So I had this argument on, about, not an argument, we had this discussion.
Yeah.
Our film was set in a world where there's a virus going around, and when there's an outbreak, if you don't take the pill, you die. And there's a bunch of people working overtime in an office, and they only have one pill. So a couple of people on the crew were like, we need to have, like, a scrolling thing. We need to have a voiceover to tell people what's happening. And let me tell you, it was nothing. The world is not what people watch it for. The point of that movie was watching people know that they're going to die, and to be there with them for a few moments while they, first of all, try to decide who's going to die, and then watch people trying to deal with the fact that they know they're going to die. That's it. And so if the focus is a little bit off, but you get that, that's what the film's about. Again,
The
yeah,
emotion.
it is about emotion. It's about communication. It's about emotion. It's about telling somebody something that they didn't know about being a person. So again, I think all this, like, obsession with world building, and craft, and well, not craft, but all this world building and lore, and blah 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 blah, and this guy's a 10th level wizard, and this guy's a whatever fucking thing. People at our level are always obsessed with these details, and even like continuity details. Oh, he raised his right
Yeah,
hand on this take and didn't on this take. No
that's
audience
right.
member gives a shit about that, and if they do, you're fucking up.
Yeah,
If an audience
yeah,
member notices that the person had their right hand up and didn't in this take, it's because your writing and your acting isn't good. It's because you don't know what story you're telling. And so,
it's not why.
and it's you're not confident. You should never use a take where you can feel the heat coming off the takes when the actor's doing their job. The actor's job is to generate that heat, and it's the director's job to
Yeah.
follow that heat and to create that heat from shot to shot. And it's everyone else's job to do it. And if there's the camera's a little off or whatever it is, as long as the audio is audible and as long as the video's there, honestly, you got to get good audio. But honestly, even audio is bad. If you, I dare you, they say, John Waters has that famous thing where he says, if you want to know how to make a movie, watch it with the sound off. I believe in that. But I would also argue that if you want to know how to make a movie, watch a movie with the video off. And then you'll hear how they're putting it together as an audio story. And you'll also hear that the audio on big major films sucks. They just know how to mix it. So anyway, I'm going off on a little bit.
No, I mean that's a good point. But going off what you had just said, your cast had this
That's right.
idea, creative difference. Now that you've progressed through your experience, how did you handle that creative difference
You know what?
with them?
With empathy and humility and asking them for trust. In a 48-hour film, if somebody comes to you with something, uh, I'm not when they're talking about it, I'm very curious about what they're saying and why they're saying it. I definitely believe that everybody on a set has should have the right to say anything about anything, for the most part, um, as long as they're in good faith. So if someone really like believes, they were bringing this up to me and they were saying like, "Hey, we really believe that you're fucking up by not doing this." And so I was able to kind of talk it through with them, really understand where they were coming from, and say, you know what? And actually, I kind of went the opposite direction. I said, maybe we're explaining this too much in the film. What if we took out some of the explaining so then it didn't seem weird that we were not having this world? So we kind of did less explaining. There's honestly only 3 lines of dialogue that kind of set the whole thing up. About 200 people have watched it. Not a single person didn't know what was going on, at least as far as everyone
Yeah,
knows what's going on because it actually doesn't matter what virus it is or what the deal is. It's very clear that there's one pill in 4 people, and whoever doesn't take the pills, whoever doesn't take the pill is going to die. And again, so I think cutting that out. And during disagreements, again, I'm an old guy now, and so I'm trying to project my confidence and to have humility, listen to what they're saying, and you know what? Half the time, they're right. And so if someone's right, then you just do it their way.
yeah. So basically, what you're saying is, come to the situation with empathy, but when it comes to the actual story, kind of show versus tell. Showing is more important than exposition to a certain
Well,
degree,
in
right?
this world, in this thing,
Yeah, like film.
I am, for example, there are a lot of telling that I like. Um, the only reason I'm bringing a qualm about this is because one of my favorite filmmakers is Wong Kar-wai. He's a Hong Kong filmmaker, and he loves to use voiceover. His films are dripping with voiceover, and it's kind of, in film school, if you do voiceover, they'll hit you over the knuckles with a ruler. It's
Yeah,
against,
yeah,
it's gauche. It's kind of like that glow filter. It's gauche. But
yeah,
I love it. And I also think if you got to tell somebody something, then tell it. So it's a little bit less. I mean, I didn't mean to quibble. I love a lot of telling. But for me, early stage filmmakers and no budget filmmakers should be focused on the story. And my advice to them, or at least this is just my taste, is that the worst thing you could do is make a really slick, really expensive, or for yourself, soulless film where everybody's costumes
Yeah.
look great, and you've explained the monster, and you've got this whole huge set, and you've got all these people there, and because no one's going to give a shit, and that you should focus on every film, not every film, but really the what I'm always trying to get to is how can I get two people in a room talking and make that interesting? That's what it is. That's what all of drama is. So I went through a phase where I read a lot of plays, and it made me realize that, like, yeah, like that's masterful. If you have two people in a room talking, like Die Hard is two people in a room talking, except they're falling down a mine shaft or whatever. Like the fifth
Yeah.
element is a great example of this. There's like a lot of shooting, but essentially it's just
Mhm.
the guy talking to the girl for the whole movie. They're just running from some psycho, and it looks cool. But the core of it could be done on stage between two people. So focus on that. My suggestion. And what the fuck do I know? I don't know anything, but
Well,
my
you do know
my
something.
taste does suggest that that is more important. Reading plays would be more better than like watching blockbusters in terms of us and having just more confidence. Like, who gives a shit? You know what? You're gonna go like the people that are listening to this. I don't know if this is geared towards people like no budget filmmakers, but if it is, if you are a no budget filmmaker, lean into the fact that no one's gonna watch it. Lean into the fact that if you're lucky, 1,000 people are gonna watch this film. Lean into it.
Yeah.
Then have more fun. Take it less serious, or that's not exactly. I don't mean it to necessarily mean that, but have more fun. Express yourself. Be out there. Be weirder. Um, these
Mhm.
films, a lot of these films aren't weird enough. They're too safe. They're too pretty. They're clinical, and there's nothing there. Figure out what you're trying to say, and then just say it.
That's good advice. I think that's really important. And this is for like people who are just getting in or have already been in and just want to see it at a different perspective. I want to ask you before we close up. I know you've made documentaries. What's your approach to making a documentary? What's your kind of workflow and how do you do that?
You know what? That's a great question. Thank you for asking. I worked primarily in nonfiction the whole time I had my company, and um, I think I kind of take my approach. Working in documentary is great because they don't expect you to have a big crew. So working in documentary is a great way to be a no budget filmmaker. You can make a lot of great films, a lot of great documentaries, a lot of great nonfiction films for very, very little money. And there's even like, there's a code of ethics that says you shouldn't pay a source or whatever. So it's even kind of built in that you're not supposed to, need all these resources in order to do it. I love high production value documentaries, and I love documentaries that have a lot of filmmaking. It's kind of like documentaries kind of have some of the opposite problem. There are a lot of documentaries that have a lot of guts, that kind of look like shit, and because the person's just kind of like shooting it with a handy cam or whatever. Documentaries are great when the tool, like, and TikToks are great when you're using the visual medium, like you're using focus to communicate where you should put your attention. You're using lighting to communicate a vibe. For example, in a documentary, the documentary that I produced, I was telling the directors, like, you have to put the good guys on the left and the bad guys on the right. That's the convention in film. So if you do these like little subtle filmmaking things, have scenes in the film where it just breathes, where it's just music and beautiful cinematography. Same thing, like shoot shoot the wide when someone is explaining something, and then cut to a close-up when they're crying about how their mother died or whatever it is. You got to use the tools of filmmaking in order to tell your story. So I kind of had a little bit of a reputation for being a high production value, and also um I would do things like I would have a narrator, and most of the time people would just like maybe just put a narrator, but I would shoot my narrator somewhere. I made a couple of videos for, I made a lot of videos for UW, and had a lot of students telling me their stories. A lot of times you would just kind of, other people might just throw them in a conference room, but I would put them like in their dorm room with all their stuff around and have a mic on the set and lights and shoot them in their dorm room the same way that I would with a set. And you know what? In that context, a little bit goes a long way. It's kind of like the opposite of like a in a in a in a narrative fictional film. You would expect all those lights, but if you just put two or three lights up in a narrative film, it might look underlit. But if you did it in a documentary, it's going to look great. And so I kind of just brought my same vibe. That actually I kind of shoot the documentary the same way I'll shoot um, uh, a narrative. For documentaries, they seem to have high artifice, and for narratives, they're a little bit undercooked. Not undercooked, but they're not as. I just don't care. I mean, I don't know. I'm making it seem like like I'm John Waters or something, that like we're just running and like everything's horrible and like it's just what I mean. It's not like that.
Yeah.
I'm just not obsessed with getting everything in 6K.
What about the B-roll aspect of documentary? Because I mean, it seems to be a lot of the heavy lifting is the B-roll.
Yeah, I think you can't think about it that we can't think about it that way. Documentaries suffer. Journalists make documentaries, and journalists think about in text first. So the documentary in their head is like actually an article, and then they're in their mind they're kind of cutting together the article, and they use the B-roll to kind of stuff it in between. That's kind of like also the kind of way the corporate video works. I think that
Mhm.
if you are making a documentary, it helps to think of scenes, and that B-roll is good. It's good to think about it like that, but I kind of would encourage people to think more about what story can I tell with this. So, for example, in the documentary that we shot, we were talking about the neighborhood that
What's it
bars
called?
on. This is the documentary that we shot that got picked up for distribution. One of the pieces of B-roll was just like they were talking about the kind of suburban neighborhood that this person was in, and they grew up in Iraq, and it was like very different. They lived a very idyllic, I guess, American suburban life. So you could really think to shoot that a lot of different ways, and uh, I think it was important to take a moment and look around that neighborhood in a particularly visually interesting way so that it told the story and kind of like let it breathe. And remember that the joy is in the medium of filmmaking. I'm working with a lot of like improvers and sketch people, and they kind of think about this the same way too. They think that they're like just filming a sketch, so they block it the way they would on stage, and they're just kind of like camera, 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 or whatever. But you know, um, filmmaking has its own set of tools, and that's the getting pumped just talking about it. It's really
Yeah.
the using that set of tools. There's a lot of creative potential for it, and I especially think people making TikToks. There's a huge opportunity now to make relatively high production value TikToks and to use a lot of filmmaking language in TikTok. When I'm scrolling through TikTok or Instagram and I see something that cuts well, and I see something that sounds good, and I see something that has a lot of heart, I get excited. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, that's what this medium needs.
Yeah, that's really good. Have you ever run into any legalities from the documentary? Like if you're shooting, she's telling a story about the neighborhood and people growing up in the neighborhood, and you happen to get some footage of the neighborhood, and there's people in there. How do you get
Okay.
their release, or is
Yeah.
it just a public domain, or how does
Well,
that work?
there is legalities to it, and I'm not a lawyer. I think a lot of that stuff is overstated. When you go to film school, everybody's forced to get um, everyone's forced to get a signature, a liability waiver, whatever, from every single person that's in the film. That's because in order to get E&O insurance, you need that because the lawyers are requiring you to do that. It's a lawyer thing. The actual legality is that if someone's walking down the street in Washington State, you can shoot them. Whatever you agree with it, weirdly, you can shoot them, but you can't audio record them. So even if you were like sitting there and someone was getting into a fight in Washington State, filming them is perfectly fine, but actually having your phone record audio is actually illegal in Washington State because we're a two-party consent to audio record, but no party consent to being video recorded. It's weird, but like that's what the law says. But
Yeah.
like you would need someone to bring a lawsuit towards you. Like the person walking by the neighborhood would have to see the movie and then be mad that they were there, and then have to ask you
Yeah.
to take it out, and then you don't take it out,
Yeah.
and then they would need a lawyer that would need to bring you to court, and then you would have to like respond to that. You know what I'm saying? So all of that shit
Hmm.
is for
Hmm.
insurance. And in order to get
Yeah.
insurance, they need you to have a mountain of paperwork. If you're not fucking with insurance, if you don't think that, if you're like whatever you're doing is for TikTok, also if the news can do it, you can do it. And the
Yeah.
news,
And if
yeah,
Google
exactly.
Maps,
The
Street
news
View.
just goes out and just shoots people, right? Like the news just goes out, they throw up a camera, someone talks to them, they give them a card, I've given a lot of
Hmm.
people a lot of business cards. So, like, if you're out there shooting on the street, have a business card, be respectful or whatever. I've had a lot of cops threaten to throw me in jail, and I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? I had to like go shoot the Ninth Circuit. Yeah,
Ah,
I had to go shoot the Ninth Circuit Court, for example. So I'm out in front of the Ninth Circuit Court filming it, and and I get swarmed by a bunch of cops. Same thing happened to me when I was shooting just some random building downtown. I actually still don't know what it was. I think it was like maybe the jail or something. And I was kind of shooting it, and then got swarmed by a bunch of cops, and me and the guy I was shooting with got pulled in and got interrogated. So be careful, but it is your right. You can shoot there. You can shoot whatever you want, regardless of
wow.
what these dickheads say. And then, but you got to be
Yeah.
respectful and whatever it is. But also, that's only ever happened because I was shooting the Ninth Circuit Court, of appeals, and I was shooting a jailhouse downtown, and I didn't know. I actually was shooting like like at a what is the thing where they a big dock in Tacoma,
Is yeah.
and a bunch of cops came, but I just told them what I was doing, and they said, "Okie doke." So yeah, be careful. But again, all of that stuff is just about like knowing where you are. Just don't be a dumbass, and you'll be fine. But if your film is going to get picked up for distribution, it does take a mountain of paperwork, and everybody that's in it needs to sign it. But it's only just so because you're getting insurance so that you don't get sued. So they don't want you to like have done anything that's going to get them sued.
You were on stage doing an improv
Yeah.
piece. There was a
Yeah.
piano. You're asking the crowd censor, how did that develop and how did you come up
Say
with
that one
that?
more time. There was I'm on stage.
How did yeah, you're on stage and you're asking the audience for suggestions, a
Oh
couple
yeah.
words, and then you start riffing on what
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
they
And
thought
I
of.
have a synthesizer.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was my solo improv show. So I had been developing my solo improv show in late 2019, early 2020, and so I had my show was that I just asked for something mundane that they did that day, like they did the dishes or whatever, and I have a synthesizer and a looper pedal, and I kind of tell a story, 25 minute. It's like a 25-minute long audiobook, and I'm
yeah,
scoring it live as it goes with the looper pedal. You know what? That was my improv show. And then I debuted it on February 29th, 2020. And I had 40 people come to the show. And I was like, yeah, I'm getting ready to book this, like this. I felt like the show was really great. And then we went out dancing, and everyone thought they were going to die the next day. It's February 29th, 2020. So I actually haven't got to perform that again. But yeah, that was kind of an improv thing.
are you gonna go back
I don't
and
know.
do
Should
it?
I? It's hard. You know,
It's a
Improv, like everything else, is like it's a magic trick. So it's a lot
yeah.
easier than it looks when you practice. And so I have been able to, I don't know if I would still be able to just kind of let her rip for 20, 25 minutes. But again, it comes from like having a background in music and making movies and doing improv, that I just had such a sense of stories and acting and just being able to kind of do whatever, and being okay with failing. I was just kind of like able to let her rip. And as I was practicing, I did it 70 times or something. And so I got used to, I
Awesome.
got used to it being bad, and then I made it better and better. So yeah, if
Yeah.
you would think I should, I will do it again. But only if you have,
You
yeah,
gotta follow
you
your
text me and
dreams.
tell me if I should do it again or not. Hey Joe, I gotta take my
All right.
daughter to. We got like a. I gotta take her to this thing to
No
go see some of
worries.
her friends really quick. But thanks so much.
Yeah.
Honestly wish I could talk to you for a lot longer, but yeah, you got me pumped. Maybe we should. Maybe I'm gonna make more films. I make films now. One other thing I wanted to talk about was about not, like I said, I think I talked a little bit about it, not trying to fit every part of your life into one thing. And so now I don't really get a lot of creative satisfaction from my work. I get more money from it, but yeah, I'm dying for some more, that moment of creativity. So talking to you now, I'm
Yeah.
pumped about it. Now I'm like, hey, I am good at this.
You
So
are good at this. Thank
thank
you
you.
so
Yeah.
much, Morgan. I
Yeah.
appreciate your
Thanks for talking to
time.
me. And yeah, good
Go
luck.